Welcome to Greenhouse Grower to Grower, the podcast where we talk to growers from across the greenhouse industry about market trends, innovation, their biggest challenges and opportunities, and more. I'm Brian Sparks, editor of Greenhouse Grower. After a 10-year absence, the International Plant Trialing Conference is coming back. The event will be held in Minneapolis in mid-October and is organized by All America Selections and the National Garden Bureau. In this episode, I talked to Diane Blazek, Executive Director of All America Selections, about why the time was right to bring back the conference, what attendees can expect to learn, and how the format of the event will offer enhanced networking opportunities for experienced trial managers as well as novices. Here's our conversation. So the Plant Trialing Conference is coming up here later on in the year, and so we want to talk just more about how this conference developed, and you're really for folks who are looking to attend this year, what they can expect. But let's kind of start at the beginning and talk about the history of this conference, why it's not an annual conference either, but just how the idea of it came about.
Sure, yeah. It's actually very interesting that the first one that I am aware of was back in 2011, and it was held in the UK. And it was a very good conference, very scientific. In fact, if you research it online, you'll find out that every single session was turned into a white paper. So it was very academic, great information, and kind of got this ball rolling. And
Sure.
with the idea of having a plant trialing conference.
Yeah.
So then Longwood took it over, volunteered to host it in, let's see here, 2013. And I was very luckily invited to be as a speaker and presenter. And at that time, I was new here, so the topic was like, well, how is All America Selections reinventing themselves to
Yeah.
continue on with plant trialing? But that conference, as is everything that Longwood does, was amazing. They had really good attendance, great sessions. Um, it was all sessions, education,
Okay.
networking, sharing. There was no trials involved, which is kind of unusual on
Yeah.
in our industry.
Sure.
Yeah, and, so anyway, that event was really good, and then some people that were involved with the Far West Conference on the other coast, decided to have one in 2015. I attended that one, and, I was a co-presenter with Alan Armitage that we did some talking about trials, and being in Oregon, that one was a little bit more focused on, woodies,
Yeah.
flowering shrubs, perennials, that kind of thing.
Sure.
That's what's more prevalent out there with the nursery industry, but it was still a good event. And then there was a group of us that kind of pondered with having one in future years. And, that conversation didn't go anywhere, and that conversation didn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
Um, and just things got really busy, and then COVID. And shortly after COVID, then we started rethinking and said, it's even if we do this right away, it's probably gonna be like a 10-year, so a decade between events,
Yeah.
and all of our constituents, we work with the All America Selections judges, we work with the breeders, we're working with public gardens, universities, you name it,
Mhm.
and everybody said, "This needs to happen again." There have been so many changes in how trials are conducted, what the expectations for trials are, um, new breeding that can impact trials. Just the other day, and not that combinations are new, but some of these liners where they're putting two or three species or two or three varieties into one combo kind of thing,
Yeah.
even that is impacting trialing. So that's a very long-winded explanation of the history, but also kind of the why we decided to bring it back after a decade.
Okay, okay. And I think before we talk specifically about this year's event, I am curious as you look ahead, are you already kind of thinking through, okay, do we want to bring this back into being an every other year event? And as All American Selections, do you think can maybe keep taking the lead on this moving forward? It seems like responsibility has shifted over the years when it was, originally going forward.
Yeah, you're right. And as we all know, something done by volunteers sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. And
Yeah.
that's kind of what we found with this trialing conference.
Mhm.
So we're more than happy to take the lead on it. And you ask, will it be in every other year? Will it be every 5 years? And the honest answer is we don't know yet
Sure.
because we don't wanna do something if it's not needed and not be well attended and
Yeah.
not be very worthwhile. So we are going to basically ask our attendees, what and this is gonna be like the last hour of the plant trialing conference. We're gonna
Yeah.
talk about future conferences, overall the future of plant trialing, is there a need for this or that or whatever the case might be? So we really, we're going to look at these 150 or so attendees and say, what do you think the frequency should be?
Yeah.
And I can't predict the future, but, if they say every other year, every 5 years, once a decade, then that's what we'll go with. And, obviously, you're always going to kinda keep your eye and ear out to see, "Oh, well, this is happening, and so maybe we need to do something sooner." And I can envision, working with different people. If Longwood comes back and says, "Hey, we'd like to partner on the next one in 2030,"
Yeah.
great. If, one of the major growers wants to say, "Let's do it in partnership with this or that," the more our industry collaborates on events, the better we all are.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I would imagine too, as you're looking at that type of decision is, not that we didn't have the internet or social media around when this was an every other year event, but I got to imagine there's more ways to have everybody stay connected in between the actual in-person conferences as well.
Yeah, you are absolutely right, and, we're in the process of putting some final touches on some ways where the people who attend, as well as those who can't attend, can still chat,
Mhm.
collaborate, do some things like that. So
Yeah.
that'll be happening before, during, after the conference.
Okay. Okay. So let's talk about this year's event. First of all, the location. How did you decide on the Minneapolis area for it?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. And it kind of was, like this flow chart. Okay, well, where do we wanna have it geographically?
Mhm.
Okay, well, middle of the country really makes sense. That way, we're not favoriting the East Coast or the West Coast or the North or the South. So we thought if we really had it centrally located, so that was question number A.
Sure.
Secondarily was, in the meeting planning business, they call it first tier or top tier cities, second tier cities, etc.
Yeah.
So we're located in Chicago, but we know Chicago is an expensive venue anytime you have anything, hotels, rooms,
Yeah.
the union for setup of anything and AV and all that. However, we also realized we don't wanna make somebody take 2 or 3 flights to get here. So,
Right.
depending on where the attendees are located, of course, but Minneapolis has a nice hub, very large airport serving a lot of different airlines.
Mm.
We did look at, I had a big spreadsheet of cities in Michigan, Indiana, Missouri, Iowa, Wisconsin, Minneapolis. I think I'm including all of our cities. Oh, and then
Yeah.
other cities in Illinois. Um, and so it was an interesting exercise to really, get all these hotel RFPs and compare the room rates. We also wanted a hotel that was the big enough size
Yeah.
and venue, but was close to an airport. And it was surprising how many places, it was going to be a 25-minute drive from the airport. So, and especially if the hotel didn't have a free shuttle or something.
Mhm.
So, the whole idea was to make this economical and easy for anybody to attend. So, our registration fees are $3.99 for 2.25 days, and that's almost unheard of anymore
Yeah.
to get all that. And that includes a reception, 2 breakfasts, 2 lunches, and 1 dinner, all for
Okay.
$3.99 plus all the
Yeah.
stations. The hotel is a free 10-minute shuttle ride from the Minneapolis airport, so that's easy. One night we have dinner with peers, so we needed a place where there was a lot of restaurants, and I think 2 of our dinner with peers, you'll actually have to Uber to or Lyft or whatever to, but everything else is either walking distance or this public transportation that goes between our hotel and, the Mall of America, MOA, as everybody calls it.
Yeah.
Um And then, there really is a lot to see and do in and around the Twin Cities also. Bailey Nurseries is located there. The University of Minnesota has trials there.
Yeah.
You wanna do fun stuff, there's certainly fun stuff to do there. I was just talking with David Sleeslag from the, ARTS, the Arts Rose Trialing, and he's over in River Falls, and we're gonna
Okay.
kinda wait until the last minute, and if a frost hasn't hit, then he's gonna welcome people to see his rose trials
Oh,
also.
nice. Okay.
So, a lot of people I know I've already talked to a few people from Europe who are like, "Oh, I'm tacking on 2 days on both ends, and I'm gonna go see growers in the area or public gardens in the area."
Yeah.
So that's, again, my long-winded answer to why we picked, Minneapolis for the location for this year's event.
Okay. Well, and I know, that's the good thing about, plant trials throughout the year is, I mean, the diverse mix of locations that you have. So, you have growers of various sizes that are hosting trials. You have university research trials. You have botanical gardens, and a lot of other different types of settings. So it did that factor into who you think your target audience is going to be for attending this?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's all of the above that you named plus some.
Yeah.
So, breeders are presenting, breeders are attending, breeders are sending their trialing staff, growers are presenting, growers are sending their trialing staff. Same with public gardens, same with universities. And it's not just ornamentals. I want to make sure that that's very clear that,
Yeah.
we've got like a flowery shrub section, we've got perennials, we have annuals, we have seed annuals, vegetative annuals, we have edibles. There's a
Mhm.
bunch of vegetable people that are presenting and attending.
Yeah.
So it's very broad based, but there will be a separate section for data collection on ornamentals versus data collection on vegetables. They're two very different things.
Yeah.
There's a post harvest trial for vegetables because you don't have that for annuals, but
Right.
then you put in a cut flower trial. So we've got a lot for cut flower people.
Yeah.
So, yeah, really trying to make it broad, but yet, be worthwhile for everybody. That's very important.
Yeah. Well, I would imagine too. I mean, as a breeder, I mean, you're providing a plant material to so many different locations, and the follow up on that, I got to imagine, has got to be very challenging. But the fact that you can bring everybody together into this type of location and say, okay, not only are you looking at the long and short term future of trialing, but you get a chance to look at specifically how that year went. Say, how did we do in this area? How do we do in this area? And then what I know that a lot of these trial sites focus both on growers and consumers. So kind of going through, here's what growers like, here's what consumers liked. And, I always, that's the big question for me a lot of times is how is it as a breeding company, do you kind of mirror what a grower might be looking for and what a consumer might be looking for in a plant? Because it's sometimes going to be completely different things.
Oh, you are so right. And so it's been interesting. So a lot of the breeders are saying, because trialing has changed so much and our expectations have changed, so we need
Yeah.
to make sure that we communicate that. And then to your point, as I'm going through the panels, because most of the panels are 4 and 5 people, which just to speak to that for a second, we did that because one speaker for 50 minutes will present one viewpoint. So this is going to be like, wow, 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 wow. It's speed dating. You're going to really get a lot in a short amount of time. So it might
Mhm.
be information overload, but that's okay. We would like to provide more than too much rather than too little.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
in our introductions, some of the things you just talked about is what the panelists are going to talk about. You know, I'm a grower, my customer is this, the people who read my trials is this demographic, the people who get my trial report is this.
Mhm.
And then we have 2 different sessions about marketing and promoting your trials. One is marketing and promoting to the industry, and
Okay.
another one is marketing and promoting to consumers,
Yeah.
because some will do only industry, as you say, some will do both. I will be on the panel as All America Selections. I do a lot of promoting to consumers. So, yeah, those are definitely points that several of our seminars will hit on.
Okay. Are these going to be concurrent sessions where there's multiple things going on at once or?
Oh, excellent question. For the most part, there is only 1 session per hour,
Okay.
but there is a little segment that will be 2 or 3 hours long yet, but you'll still tightly refining that, where it will be for the experienced trial manager, the owner, whatever,
Yeah.
and then the other one will be more for, I'm in my beginning stages of my trialing career,
Yeah.
or I may be a student and I'm really interested. So we will have 2 tracks for 2 or 3 hours on one day.
Okay.
And then on another day, we will have the 2 tracks to separate ornamentals versus edibles.
Mm.
The post-harvest versus the cut flowers, the
Yeah.
data collection for ornamentals versus the data collection for edibles. So those will be separate sessions, but then any session that could apply across the board will be a single track.
Okay. Okay. And I like that approach too, because I mean, this industry can only benefit when there's more folks out there doing trials. So the fact that you can, focus on, here's somebody who's been doing it for a while versus somebody who's getting started in trials and what they need to know to get things off the ground or to make those early improvements from year to year too, I think is really interesting.
Yeah, yeah, you are so right there.
Okay. Yeah. We talked to a few other growers because at the end of each year, our own team at Greenhouse Grower, connects with trial managers across the country and ask them about, how their trials went this year. We also ask sometimes about things that they're doing beyond specifically variety trials. So, for example, did you try anything from plant nutrition this year? We get some good ideas from that. Is that one of the things that you're asking that you're going to be talking about at the show?
Let's see here. So some more specific culture, is that kind of where you're going? Are
Yeah,
they trying things?
Yeah, I think so, because a lot of it has to do with, it's how to, keep variety keep some a variety that's been around for a little while, how to educate your grower and your consumer on how to be successful with it in the long term.
Yeah, yeah. So I was on one panel practice session last week,
Yeah,
and they were definitely talking about things like that. We tried this, we tried that, we moved it here, we moved it there. A big thing is, like you mentioned earlier, a production trial,
yeah,
either a proprietary trial for a breeder to get all the production data down so they can create good culture sheets
yeah,
versus a grower who's saying, we're going to bring it in and trial it in production to decide, is it going to be easy for us to produce,
right.
versus a garden performance trial. So, yes, all of that is going to be addressed in several different sessions.
Okay, okay. And I was going through the program, and we'll talk here in a second about just overall how to plan for coming to this. But there were some things that really stood out to me. Especially using technology, using emerging technology in your trials. So coming up with apps and AI systems. And then as you said, how the industry uses trials. How did you build that part of the schedule for this?
Well, that's a lot of brainstorming.
Yeah.
We have our NGB board of directors, and a lot of them are involved in trials. We have our AAS judges who are involved in trials. And it has been a lot of brainstorming, a lot of meetings. We put together basically, this template, this graphic of all these different sessions and the topics. And then all of a sudden we would say, well, wait a minute, there's enough information in here to divide it into two.
Yeah.
And then there was another situation where as we talked and developed it, we were like, this is like an 80% overlap with this other session. So let's combine them. That opens up a time slot for something else. So it's been an interesting house of cards.
Sure.
uh, to put all of this together. And I'm not claiming that we did it perfectly. We're finding out as we go along. I mean, you just mentioned AI. And when we first were really putting this together, AI wasn't where it is now. It was there, but it wasn't like it is today. And it's not like it will even be in October.
Right.
So we're we're just kind of like, can you say, putting little reminders into all of our panels to, well, be thinking. How is AI being used? We even talked about drones. Who's using drones for their trials? We have that whole session on trialing apps and software. And then the other thing that's really coming into play is sustainability,
Yeah.
as well as climate change, breeding for climate change. How do you trial for climate change?
Yeah.
What happens when you get the 100-year floods? So, yeah, I mean, and I'm not laughing, it's not funny. These are really serious things. And so all of those are, I mean, if you saw our outlines, I had this thing at the top of each panel outline is let's not forget to talk about sustainability in this session. Let's not forget to talk about climate change in this session.
Yeah. Well, especially the fact that, this is the first version of this conference that's taken place since the USDA's zone hardiness maps have changed. So, I mean, that's got to play a big role in this.
Right, right.
Okay. We talked about a lot of things related to the conference. What else can attendees expect when they come that we haven't talked about yet?
Okay. And this might be one of my favorite things. You have these sessions, it's 2 jam-packed days. They start at 8, they go to 5.
Yeah.
But it's not just education. There is going to be so much networking,
Hmm.
peer-to-peer opportunities, and so I'm gonna tell you about a couple of them.
Okay.
So, first of all, at our opening night reception, and we realize that there's probably a lot of people in the industry that maybe will be the only person from their company attending.
Yeah.
Maybe they're new to the industry, new to their position. So, at our opening night reception, first of all, the whole theme for this from the fun standpoint, other than plant trialing,
Yeah.
is it's a Minnesota welcome. And I don't
Hmm.
know if you've heard that, but the Minnesota people are genuinely nice, very welcoming. So from the minute you walk in, you're going to get a lot of open arms, welcoming, etc.
Yeah.
The opening night reception, you're going to have a tag, a little label on your name tag, and you have to find 4, 5, 6 other people with that same sticker. I called it a tag or label. So it's a
Hmm.
sticker on your name tag,
Yeah.
and then you have to converse with them and find out something that you have in common with them
Okay.
other than plant trialing or horticulture.
Nice.
And the first group that comes up to me and says, "Hey, we figured it out and it's this," you're gonna get a little prize, so a little reward. So we're gonna have this with a bunch of different groups networking.
Nice.
Then, I mean, of course, there's breakfast, but we're gonna not everybody's a morning person, so we'll just let you have breakfast. If you want to network, that's up to you.
Hmm.
Our lunch tables are going to be arranged. I'm not gonna call it a seating chart, but you know how a wedding has a seating chart?
Yeah.
Well, we will post this and it'll say, this table is talking about trialing of combinations. This table is gonna talk about good photography techniques.
Okay.
And so when you come out of the session and you're going over to the buffet lunch that's right there in the hotel, you can look at these tables and say, I don't care about that. Ooh, I would like to go talk about that and see who else wants to talk about that. So you go
Oh,
find that
nice.
table and you're going to eat lunch and talk about that topic.
Yeah.
And then the next day will be similar, maybe slightly varied with names of presenters. So after a day and a half, you can say, well, I heard Brian Sparks talk, and wow, that was really interesting. I have some questions for him. I'm going to go sit at his table.
Okay.
So that's the 2 luncheons. And then
Yeah.
we also have dinner with peers on Tuesday night. And when you register, you pick your restaurant, and then it's going to be groups of anywhere from 8 to 12 will Uber or take the light rail or walk if they're close enough to these restaurants. And you have small groups to where you can really get to know them and, build
Hmm.
relationships, meet new people,
Yeah.
talk about trialing, talk to the breeders. So yeah, so what did I just name? Like 4 different networking opportunities that are also going to come out of this conference.
Oh, that's great. Well, and as you know, as somebody who's attended several different types of conferences over the years, sometimes that's the best way to learn. It's great to sit in a classroom and listen to a speaker or listen to a panel, and that's awesome. But the things that you learn the most can sometimes take place at as you said, even with something like breakfast, it's going
Yeah.
to be more low key, but you might sit down next to somebody you haven't met before. 5 minutes later, you know a lot more than you thought you ever would about that person and some of the things that they're trying. So I like that.
Yeah, yeah. And then there's also an opportunity, before and after. we're not doing any official tours.
Okay.
Right now on our website, we have some contact information that if anybody wants to visit Bailey Nursery, you
Okay.
can do that on Monday or Thursday. So we have contact information. If you want to visit the University of Minnesota, you can contact Neil Anderson and you can go visit their trial, which in October will be toward the end of the season. But
Right.
so that's a great opportunity. I've not put this on the website yet. I'm going to email all of our early registrants first.
Yeah.
We're going to get kind of a behind the scenes tour at the Mall of America.
Oh, nice.
And so that will be another opportunity to talk to their horticulturists and the people who do the plants there.
Mhm.
That will probably be limited.
Yeah.
And then over in River Falls, Wisconsin, I think I mentioned that earlier, that if the trials still look good and if northern Wisconsin has not had a frost yet,
Sure.
then David will open up his campus rose trials for anybody who wants to visit, which I think he said it's like a 30 or 40-minute drive from the hotel.
Okay. Okay.
So additional opportunities to see things. And then, oh my gosh, Minnesota, I mean, Minneapolis, St. Paul has so many amazing garden centers.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna put that list too for anybody who's visiting from out of town. Like if you want to tack on an extra day, go see these garden centers. They're pretty amazing.
Oh, yeah. Well, and again, that's another way to learn something new besides sitting in a classroom and that experience is getting out and, not just visiting a trial while you're there, but also going to the locations where the consumers are actually buying plants. So I love that approach as well.
Right.
You mentioned the website a couple of times. So as you start to wind down here a little bit. So what is the website? Where can people get more information? And then is there a deadline for registering for the event?
Okay, so our website, our general website is aaswinners.com. We also have a .org URL, which is all hyphen americaselections.org.
Okay.
And then when you get to that page, one of the tabs up the top is about, and under there it's meetings.
Okay.
So it's not the easiest thing to find, but hopefully, I mean, you guys do a great job of helping us promote it. So I'll be sending out additional press releases and I'll give you the right link for it.
Sure.
We do have an early bird discount. I talked about the registration, and it's
Mm,
$3.99 until August 1st. So you have one more month to register at the discounted rate. After that, the price does increase. So you do get the early bird rate until August 1st. And then we will cut off registrations October 1st because
okay.
then we have to take care of the registrations, the catering, the name tags, and everything like that.
Yeah. Well, I know that, we'll have a presence there from the greenhouse grower team. We wouldn't definitely don't want to miss something like this. Any last minute words on folks who are interested in attending or advice and things that they should be thinking about?
I think 2 things, and we talked about it very, in depth in the beginning, but this is not an every year event. If
Yeah.
you don't attend this year, we don't know when the next one will be.
Yeah.
It could be 5 years, it could be 10 years. So it's just something that you kinda have to take advantage of. And then the other thing is when you're flying in, book your seat, by the windows because that is prime color time in the northern part of the United States. And
Yeah.
if you're flying into Minnesota, you're gonna see all the colors.
That's a great point I never would have thought about for folks coming in, especially from out of town. So I love that. Awesome. Well, definitely looking forward to it and hope the event goes well. I know there's a lot of work that goes into it, but such a unique experience to really talk about trials and what's happening and the benefits of a plant trial. So that's great.
Yeah, thank you so much, Brian. We're excited.
Thanks for joining us. You can learn more at greenhousegrower.com. Please subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen, and please leave us a rating as it helps other podcast listeners find the show.